Hey, hey,
Hey,
Here we are.
good day.
there we went. Man, here we go. Here we go. One more day. This is going to be so. Yesterday we left off. We had talked about. Oh, nice. Is that a barbecue grill brush? Like
No, but it's like it's basically as tough as one.
a shoe polish brush?
You don't have a beard brush?
That's what this is.
No, I need one. I
Yeah.
no.
Oh, for Brent,
Oh,
got it.
I don't keep
speaking-
one at my desk. That's weird, but I have a beard brush.
Yeah, nice.
That's
Speaking
weird.
of my wife, though. Turns out, you remember yesterday when I said that my wife didn't remember that or didn't notice the day that I shaved for the first time since she's known me? Turns out she actually watches the show. And so last night she's like, I'm starting a scorecard. So all the times that you don't notice something that I did, and that one time, so I shouldn't.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for viewing. This is great.
I had no idea. I was like, why would you watch the show? And she's
Hey,
like, because she's actually kind of heavily invested in it because she did all the graphics and stuff for the show and the intro video and all that stuff. So it's pretty awesome.
Hey, it's Cube Jerome.
Hey, here we go. Here we go.
I always, love for the regulars to sound, and even if you're not a regular, just sound off in chat, say hello. We like to see you here.
Yeah, even if you're not a regular, we want to get to know you, get to recognizing you. And I noticed Cube Jerome is actually coming in from our AWS Containers Twitch channel. So if you don't know about that and you're listening and watching us on the AWS channel, great. We're going to keep going there. But if you are wanting push notifications specifically about this show and other container-related content, then you can subscribe at twitch.tv/AWS Containers, and you will then get push notifications every time we go live. So awesome! Oh, look, Justin Garrison's here.
That guy keeps trolling. Should kick him out.
Nice. Yeah, ban Justin Garrison. No, I'm kidding.
No, never. We need him. So.
All right. Well, what should we talk about today?
I feel like there's more we wanted. Did you mention the YouTube channel had the custom name now for?
Yeah. So we finally qualified for a YouTube custom URL. So youtube.com/containers from the couch. And you can watch our whole archive. Every day I add whatever the latest video is. I add it into the playlist, and I have a playlist for EKS/Kubernetes related stuff. I have a playlist for all containers from the couch, and then a playlist for ECS specific stuff. So, depending on which way you lean, maybe you want to watch only content, of a certain variety. We also happen to divide it up that way on containersfromthecouch.com. We have a few more tags that you can sort through, but everything there is also date ordered. Newest to oldest. You can pick the tags that you're looking for, and you can also You can also type in the search bar whatever you're looking for, and hopefully have that come up and reveal itself. And then definitely, I encourage everyone to watch us at 1.5x when you're watching back, historically, because I get long-winded. I'll admit it. So, if you want to cut your time invested down just a little bit, but still get the same amount of information, definitely, speed up the video. That's totally cool.
Now, there needs to be some sort of intelligence for speeding up certain people, because I feel like I talk way too fast. And so it could be like, hey, I want to turn that knob for Brent a little up, but turn Justin down a little bit. I don't know. So,
that's totally accurate, because Adam is kind of the same way. And I started off trying to listen at 2x, and Adam was way too fast for 2x. So 1.5 seems to be the right balance where you can still understand Adam, but I'm finally talking at a satisfactory pace. So I don't know why I talk so slow. It's probably because I'm from Oklahoma, Texas. I mean, I've lived all over, I've lived in New York City. They talk fast. I didn't. So
you've also been doing presentations for a long time, and talking slow is better. And I always have to think to myself, slow down. Like, I know, like, I start rambling and words don't have separators anymore. And so I often have to mentally think, I don't need to talk this fast. I'm not under a time constraint of any sort. I just need to slow down.
Yeah, totally. Hey, I see a question here that I was thinking about the other day. I started with EKS Workshop. Is there a way to play with EKS with free tier? And I was thinking about that. The answer is technically right now, no. However, I was thinking about this, and tell me what you think, Justin and Adam.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, yeah. Oh, and yeah, Adam.
Oh, you're here.
2 cents.
Just kidding.
If we, so like 80% of EKSWorkshop.com is not EKS specific. It's just Kubernetes generic information, and that's great. If we were to use something like K3S on a cheap free tier instance, I wonder like how much of it could we do of that sort of generic Kubernetes stuff could we do where the concepts still apply equally? Is how compatible do you think K3S is, in the grand scheme of things?
So there's been a lot of work on inside of the Kubernetes community to make specifically the kubelet use less resources. Because when you use it on a single instance, you have to run the API server and you have to run the kubelets to, schedule things. And free tier, I think, is like half a gig of memory, which is usually the constraint for those to fit.
Free tier is interesting because we all are used to thinking of it as like, a T3 micro for a year, but it's actually, you can do 2 T3 micros for half a year or 4 T3 micros for, a quarter of a year. So I was thinking, we might be able to suggest that you could build a cluster and, still have small instances that aren't using much memory, but still spread out the footprint among multiple instances so that you could still,
there's also the notion of the EKS control plane is charged, not like, it's not a one chunk month sort of thing. So if you play with it for a few hours and turn it off, you're going to be spending maybe 10 cents. It's not like a big charge to actually get, to use these cluster schedulers for a short period of time. When I was first learning, I was doing it at lunch breaks. I was like, hey, what is this Kubernetes thing? Like, I want to figure it out. And I'd go to cloud providers and just like spin one up, use it for an hour and a half and make sure I shut everything down. I think my bill at the end of the month was like 12 cents. I was like, like I'm okay with that as like the cost of learning some of this stuff. And so that is also an option. It is hard if you have a workshop that extends past a certain time. You're like, hey, I want this for tomorrow, because then you have, some amount of time. You can't suspend the control plane and say, I don't want you anymore. But if they're easy enough to, if you save the commands to spin them up and shut them down, some of that is absolutely viable. It's a lot less work in that case too, where it's like, oh, I need to spin up 3, T3 micros or something, and then I need to install everything manually. It's just EKS control, create cluster, EKS control, delete cluster when you're done, and you'll get a bill for it. But yeah, it's going to be, pretty minimal for an hour or two.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and there was a question here. Do you get charged if they? So I assume, obviously, as Justin just said, control plane is just constant, right? You can't shut control plane off, but the data plane, the question is, do you get charged if they're shut down, or do you need to delete the instances to stop billing? So I just know from what I know that with EC2, you're not going to pay for your compute while it's shut off. But if you have anything in EBS, any storage, you do pay for storage, but it's minimal.
Yeah, and if you pick instances, like I think in the workshop, we by default bring up like M5 mediums, or I don't remember what exactly. So those get EBS attached to them. But if you pick something that only has instance store, which is very appropriate because you're running ephemeral containers, pick something like that. Then when you do shut off that data plane, there's nothing to be charged for. You'll still get charges for things like, I think VPCs are free, but NAT gateways aren't. So there'll be some stuff like that that'll continue to tick off. But if you're just trying to build a cluster for as cheap as possible, then I'm thinking I'm actually tempted to like experiment with K3s or build a K8s cluster on ARM-based super small instances that still might fit in the free tier, for a few months maybe.
I would almost guarantee if you search on GitHub, there's going to be someone that has a K3s Terraform. It creates T3 micros with everything you need in it. I would be surprised if that doesn't exist.
Wait a minute.
Totally. And then if you build it,
prove me wrong, Adam. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
No. This just reminds me, Massimo and Pahood, two developer advocates on the containers side, just released a CDK module around this. I'm going to find it right now.
Yeah, those were ARM specific, but it's K3s on ARM instances, which are cheaper than standard Intel CPU T instances. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So I think there's still stuff you can do. That you can also deploy into the default VPC and then deploy onto public subnets so that you don't need a NAT gateway. And those are two good cost-saving moves also. I see Physium is asking, can EKS use T2 micro instances? Yes, I think so. I think there's going to be some overhead. T2 micro is so small that running kubelet is going to consume probably most of the memory.
Yeah. You'll get a couple pods maybe.
Yeah. So, but it's still worth maybe trying out. And again, you can go up from micro and stay within free tier. You just won't get it for a full year.
Go ahead, Justin.
I would say like local, Kubernetes clusters also like Kind and Minikube, and you can run K3s locally. Like those are all valid options too. If you don't want to run these things in a cloud provider, like play with it locally, learn. That's one of the like big benefits that Kubernetes kind of was like, hey, well, let's just run it locally. It's a pro and con because like you don't want to run everything there, but if you are playing with understanding it and deploying certain things and just minimal workloads, absolutely run it locally and try it out.
Yeah. So Cube Jerome asks, would you recommend public subnets for production? And it's funny because used to my answer would definitely be no. However, I'm coming around on that quite a bit. I'm getting close to saying yeah. I'm basically at the stage now where I totally get it if that's what you want to do. Because the more you think about it, the more you realize all of your actual security is being provided through security groups. And when you look at the routing options that you have between public and private subnets, if someone is able to drop in and start generating traffic on your public subnet, they'll be able to get to your private subnet anyway. So if you want to try and manage the ACLs between those two, good luck. Yes, that is a mechanism that you have, but these things are so the ports that pods run on these days, it's all so dynamic, and the ACL list is so fixed that you're basically going to be allowing everything. And once you allow it, that ACL can't discriminate between good traffic and bad traffic. So if you're worried about it from a security perspective, I think there's really it's security theater at this point. And if you just instead put it on public subnets, then that frees up a lot. And this actually leads us to what I think tomorrow's show is going to be. This is, by the way, how quickly we can adapt on Containers from the Couch. There's a new integration with managing security groups for your pods. And bingo, exactly. So we're going to actually go through that blog post tomorrow, and we're gonna kind of set up the demo, walk through it, see how it all works. And now that you can do security groups per pod, I think that's the better security posture to adopt, and that's going to apply equally well to public subnets and private subnets.
I just want to say I do want to put a big a big asterisk disclaimer here. I totally there's cost benefits. I would say ease of complexity benefits of just running public, but you do have to have some discipline. And
Yes.
I think this is where guardrails and controls come into play. So you can't have someone come in and attach a public or open up a security group on some resource in the public subnet, attach a public IP, etc. So you just got to be careful. But yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I just felt like I had to say that.
You're right. And I should say, like you just did, I'll say it too. I think you can do it safely. I think you can also do it dangerously. But I believe that is still also true for things in the private subnet. I think that NAT is no longer sufficient at, protection. So, yeah. And if I'm shocked that Techie Stories isn't here chiming in, saying
she always has a security question or something security related.
Totally.
Oh man.
So don't freak out if you're a security person. I'm stopping just shy of saying I recommend it. I'm just saying now if you're doing it, I kind of get it. So yeah, that's my position on that.
There was one other question I wanted to bring up here, and I think this is a common question, right? So is the best way to implement Terraform or CloudFormation to create the infrastructure? Who wants to take this one? I think first of all, I just want to say, I don't think there's a best.
That's true.
I don't think there's a best. It really comes down to you. But Justin, what do you think?
For me, in the past, like I've done it multiple different ways. I've used, CDK, Terraform, CloudFormation, and usually for me, it comes down to who's going to interface with this code. If this is a person interfacing with creating things manually, I love the Terraform workflow. Terraform has a great plan, apply sort of workflow. I can see those diffs really well. And I'm blurry now, but I don't know why. But that's like, I really like the Terraform command line and the UX they put on top of infrastructure management. And I like Terraform's ability to manage more than just what, say, AWS provides. I've done lots of things with Terraform for on-prem resources and for things like Datadog and PagerDuty and there's like, again, I think I mentioned it before, there's a Domino's Pizza like Terraform provider. I can order a pizza with it. And like, so you can do a lot of stuff with Terraform to extend it really easily and tie everything into an environment of Terraform, which I love that workflow. Where Terraform for me has not been great is when I need to stamp out clones of one thing over and over and over again. If I'm managing lots of clusters, if I'm managing applications or things in a very similar way, and those resources are all in AWS, CloudFormation has been great for that because it's a template. It automatically stores that state. I can query that state with tags. I can do a lot of things for that specific use case. And so for me, CloudFormation is usually done on the back end of automation, where I say, hey, automate up to this point, and then just shove everything into CloudFormation and add some variables. And that's what EKS control is doing, where if I want to create an EKS cluster, it's making a CloudFormation stack behind the scenes that's templated out with some variables. And I think that sort of use case for CloudFormation is great. I personally don't like the AWS command line for CloudFormation. It's okay if I'm in the console, but like trying to automate that at the command line gets really verbose pretty quick. And I don't think that UX is as good as what Terraform provides. So those are my kind of takes on it. And again, like if you're doing things that are outside of AWS, you'll probably want to look at Terraform. You can extend CloudFormation with Lambdas, which is interesting. And I've done it a little in the past. It's sometimes a weird workflow, but if you're invested in CloudFormation, you can get some of those benefits of like, I also need, a PagerDuty alarm for this or a Datadog alert or something else. Like you can do those things, but it's going to be a little extra work versus using shared modules that Terraform has.
I completely agree with you, and I also think it's worth pointing out that if you don't know much about either one of them, you have to stop and just notice that they are kind of doing two completely different things. Terraform is a language that will when you run it will reach out and talk to I don't know how many different APIs. Depending on which modules you're pulling in or which Terraform commands you're using, etc. It's going to reach out and talk to the EKS API and the VPC API and the EC2 API and so on and so forth. So it's going to go direct to all of those APIs. CloudFormation, on the other hand, is one thing, and all you have to interface with is that one thing, and then it will manage reaching out to all of those APIs. So it's an added layer between you and the resources at AWS. So that can be good. You know, if you're like Justin said, in the case where you're wanting to stamp a whole bunch of things, that gives you a consistent view and a consistent way to talk to one thing instead of having to talk to 33, you know, different things and deal with all of their retries and their different rate limits and all that stuff. But on the other hand, if you're wanting to get something done quickly, and I mean like, you know, seconds versus minutes, in that scenario, then Terraform is probably going to show better because you're going direct instead of going through that middle layer of CloudFormation.
And the trade-off there is you know, Terraform, you manage state, right? Like CloudFormation is a service that manages all that for you. Terraform, you need to, especially if it's multiple users on a team, you have to put that state somewhere. You have to, if you modify, like, I don't know how many people have, you know, hand edited their Terraform state files. Like that's that's a thing.
Oh my gosh.
In emergency scenarios, I do remember this, Brent. I'm sure you remember we had to do something like this, and boy, was that scary in production.
And there wasn't, at least back then, like a syntax checker to see, you know, if you got all the colons in the right place. And it was hairy when things went wrong, because it was a giant pile of infrastructure that was all on you to have to figure out, you know, what to do with if your state was trash. So CloudFormation, on the other hand, you know, you can lint it ahead of time and you can push it, and it'll either accept it or reject it, and it won't do anything until, you know, it has accepted it, and then it'll move you forward and apply the differences and all that stuff. So there's a little bit more safety built in from that perspective. Cube Jerome mentions CF seems often behind in terms of features. And I think that has been a perception for a while, and I think that team is working to fix it. And they're doing some really interesting things behind the scenes to open it up. I don't know if you know how AWS operates, but each service team operates almost completely independently. I would say independently. I'm sure at some level that is, you know, unseen by me, there's some linkage happening. But it's at the very highest levels, and that linkage stays very high level. So the CloudFormation team has been working for a while on enabling other service teams to be able to manage their own entry points into CloudFormation. So I think once that happens, you'll start to see a lot of improvement and a lot of keeping up with the times from all the service teams. So I think there's going to be a big improvement there coming.
Yeah, I think I just want to say we hear you. Like this is something we're aware of, and we are actively working to improve this, because
totally.
Listen, I feel that pain. I felt it as a customer, right? And so I think that's the difference. You know, one of the differences, Terraform is just, it's all API calls. So as soon as a feature is released, it's available in the SDK, it's added into Terraform. So whereas with CF, it's a little different behind the scenes. Which
also gets back to the point of AWS controllers for Kubernetes, right? I mean, those are API based. It's not CloudFormation based, and so when it's in the SDK, we generate new controllers based on the API endpoints, and you can manage.
So Justin warned us about this. He said his internet went out twice today. Oh, okay, you're back. You're good.
Am I out?
Well, no, you're back.
You froze.
All right.
You did go out
like this.
It was like.
I forgot what you were saying. I got so.
I was saying AWS controllers for Kubernetes. I don't know how much of you got, which is SDK based, talks to the APIs, interface through Kubernetes. It's similar to like a CloudFormation to APIs, where you're talking to Kubernetes, making your declarative state, and then those controllers are doing all the API hooks behind the scenes.
Right.
The difference here is one is AWS service, and the other one is inside of Kubernetes cluster. And so how you want to interface with that, the ACK controllers are similar to CloudFormation in that sense.
I'm really excited to explore that. I think, you know, once there's a big set of controllers available, which is going to be very soon, I think we should like jump, you know, have a show on that and just let's build some infrastructure. Let's use our cluster to build some infrastructure.
I need to find there is a roadmap item. I don't remember if it's on the containers roadmap or if it's in ACK specifically, of they're rolling out services in phases. So I think they're doing like 5 services at a time, and they want them to, basically GA within a few months. And so as those are rolling out, they're just getting more and more services. But I mean, AWS also is growing in so many services. Like, hopefully they're going to be catching up faster than new services come out. But yeah, they definitely are hearing from customers what services they want most or first, and then rolling those out into controllers and kind of, in some cases, massaging those APIs so they're consistent with what a Kubernetes user would experience, not necessarily what an AWS user expects. And so there is some of that also is a little bit different, of like trying to match a Kubernetes user more than a direct AWS API user.
You know what I really hope for with ACK is that we'll see sort of a rollback for, I hate to overload that word, but see a kind of downward trend in running databases on cluster. I think that running databases on cluster has had an uptick because it does make certain things easier, like integrating your database information into the environment of the pods that are going to be using that database, for example. But if you still get to manage it all through Kubernetes and still get that kind of feature, but you're instead, reaching out and building an RDS instance, I think that's going to be like so much better and so much more production worthy and reliable, that I'm hoping that we'll see, that ACK will sort of get us to that next stage where we are back to mostly ephemeral workloads on cluster, and then stateful workloads are getting pushed out to to other services.
We should probably jump into some plugins.
I know, right?
I was going to say, we could just do this the rest of the time.
I mean, we should have. I'm sure there's plenty to deep dive here, and future shows could show off some of this. But yeah, there's definitely lots of ideas around infrastructure as code.
So let's get into the plugins.
Yes, plug me in.
Picking up where we left off yesterday, we were writing the Kubectl Exterminate plugin, and we had it locally in my path, basically, right? So I could run the Kubectl Exterminate command, and it would delete a pod, and I can show that off. Actually, I don't have it installed now. I uninstalled it for the purpose of this demo. So what I did was I published the code here, which again is just one bash script with I also check now. I added a feature to check for namespaces, so I could say, hey, delete a pod within this namespace, and then gave a little help output as well. So that's really all I added, and everything else was our pipes. That's just like, hey, do everything. If you don't have everything installed, let's tell you which ones you need installed, and we'll still run the command for you, but you just won't get the pretty output. So that's all the plugin is doing, and I published that into GitHub, and I tagged a release. All I did was I said, hey, git tag v02, and GitHub automatically did this piece of it for me. It zips up the code and shoves it up here as a release. And so the nice thing about that is I automatically get my tar with a well-known endpoint. Essentially, is GitHub always stores these as your repo name /archive/tag. And so I can use that now for any tag releases in a custom crew index. And the indexes are just where you're installing plugins for. There's a default one you get with crew, but we can add custom ones. And so that was the piece I wanted to show off right now, was how do you want to, if you want to publish a plugin internally to your team or organization, how do you do that? And so this is all documented really well in the crew documentation, but essentially you need another repo that just holds metadata. It holds all the metadata for all the plugins you want. They don't need to be in the same repo. They should be somewhere else. Like the crew index is just metadata around where these plugins are. And so we need a plugins directory and then a YAML file for what the plugin is going to do. And we'll dig through that real quick, which is, again, I copy and pasted this out of the docs. We're just saying this is some stuff about the actual spec, what version we want to install, the homepage, which is the repo I did, a couple descriptions. So if someone tries to get info or describe the plugin, this is what's going to tell us. What platforms we want to install to. And in this case, I'm assuming Bash. I know Windows has WSL, but I don't actually know how that works with Kubectl. So I just said, for now, we support Bash on Linux and Mac OS or Darwin. And then from that, we just say, okay, this will automatically download that tar from a well-known, from this URI. and then we want to extract some files from it. And so every tag, I don't need to change this piece every tag. So I'm just gonna say from star, extract star to a directory. And I can even see that if I go into my terminal here, .crew. This is where crew stores its information. And if I look in store, I can see all my plugins I have installed. And so let's go into crew itself. Crew is a plugin for Kubernetes or for kubectl. Oops. It'll store it under whatever the tag I am. And then there's the binary and a license file is all crew extracts from this directory. So what I'm telling crew to do is everything in the tar, extract it into that directory named after, basically my plugin and my tag. And here's a SHA for it. And then the binary that I want you to create is called exterminate. So if I look in my bin folder, I will see these are all the binaries that crew creates, which are literally just, oh, that's not it, bin. They're symlinks to those directories. So crew will automatically, and again, if you're used to brew, if you're used to some other package managers, this is how they do it, where you have one bin directory, which is just symlinks out to all the executables. And this lets you update versions easily. There's lots of ways you can do with this that makes it nice to you don't have to always extract and copy binaries around. And so all these binary files are just symlinks into another binary in the store directory.
Nice.
So that's what I'm telling it to do. So if we want to use this index now inside of kubectl, crew has, let's go back to my other directory. I want to be in there. Kubectl crew, let's show help. There's some subcommands, and index is the one we're actually curious about. I'm not used to this terminal in my browser. I keep selecting too much. It's fine. Index.
You make the font bigger in that terminal?
Yeah. Boop, boop.
Cool.
That good?
I bet that's good.
Okay. So my index command has a couple things. I have add, list, and remove for managing indexes specifically. So if I list them, you'll see my default index that comes with crew out of the box. And this is, you can replace this, but this is the one where automatically will do searches for plugins and everything else. So what I want to do is kubectl crew index add. And you notice it's just a get endpoints, which is, we mentioned it yesterday. These indexes are any get endpoints that a person can, get to. So let's copy this.
Does it have to be an HTTPS endpoint, or could it be like a get : //?
It can be get SSH as long as the user running the commands has access to get to that Git repo.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to use the HTTP endpoint, but yeah, I could use the get at GitHub user as well with SSH. Oops, sorry. I needed one thing. I need to tell it a name of what this index is going to be called. So I want AWS containers is what I'm going to call this index. So any plugins are going to be prefixed with that name. So it says I added it. If I list, you'll now see I have the 2 indexes. And to install it is just like any other crew plugin. Crew install, but I need the prefix. So I need AWS containers exterminate. And there it's going and fetching that metadata from that repo, pulling it down, and it just did everything for me. It downloaded the tar, extracted everything. Yeah, very similar to Arcade. A lot of tools like this, especially in the Kubernetes space, have been adopting this sort of style of like, we want to make it as flexible as possible to extend in a lot of ways. So making these unofficial indexes easy to do is great for helping the ecosystem grow and allowing teams and organizations to customize things internal to just their teams. Because if you have private repos that you don't want to publish to the world, like you can totally do that, and that's great. And so this is, the plugin's installed already, so I could just exterminate. There's my plugin, and it'll again, exactly like yesterday, list the pods in my namespace and exterminate one of them.
Wow.
That was easy. And we also, like I said, we have
and Calce. Yeah.
Yep. And so the only thing I have in my help is what it does, and you can use the -n to do it in a namespace. So if I control get namespaces, let's delete one in Sockshop. And that'll, again, just find a random pod in that namespace and delete it, which is great. Exactly what we want.
So if anyone didn't see the show yesterday, Justin talked about creating, plugins and going through that process. Now, today, we've taken that plugin and we've published it to make it, reusable for anyone who wants to reuse it. This is really cool.
Yeah, and it's probably worth saying, use this at your own risk. Know what it's going to do before you just install it and run it, because it is going to pick a pod and kill it. So be ready for that. It might be totally fine. That's the idea. But
right, and that's how powerful, creating your own plugins, but also discovering and listing other people's plugins, which is really where I wanted to lead with this. And shout out to Amit that has done all this work with Crew, with this ecosystem, with figuring out how to do the plugins and kind of managing that. There's a lot of tooling they've done around Crew itself to make it easy for people to discover things and use them and reuse them and share them. And that has been just a huge for people that want to do specific things with Kubectl. Maybe they don't want to write an entire plugin themselves and manage like the client Go library for Kubernetes is always kind of known to cause problems for people, just how much APIs change and how you implement it. So this is a lighter weight way to let me get a binary and do something with it. And there's some super popular plugins out there, which a lot of people use, which is great.
That's awesome. What are some popular plugins?
Well, let's go right into the actual plugins repo. So here's the Crew index under Kubernetes SIGs, and there's a plugins.md, which just lists all of the plugins that are in the main repo. And so these are, again, default. So if I search for them, I can find them here. There's also, I don't have the tab up anymore, but you can actually get stats on who's installing, how many installs there were, which is pretty cool. Just to be able to see hey, oh, this is a top plugin. Some of them are not 100% accurate just for the plugin, because if you share a repo in a release with a plugin and a Kubernetes tool, you might get different numbers. But it's really interesting just to be able to see, oh, wow, it looks like these plugins are the most popular. I mean, Crew obviously is one of the most popular because it is used to install all the other plugins.
That's
awesome. Go through this. I should even paste this in the chat because people can. I actually want to hear someone go through this list and find a plugin that looks interesting, and we'll try to make it work in this stream too.
I think CTX looks interesting. I think that's something that people have to deal with quite often, is changing contexts. Yep. So I would imagine that would be pretty popular. I do it by changing Cloud9 instances, but I know that I'm in the minority.
So CTX, yeah, like you said, kubectl and kubeNS were both standalone binaries, but they're also plugins. And so you can see here, it actually gives me an interactive prompt, which one do you want to be on? And it even highlights the one that I'm currently on. And so I can see, oh, if I want to switch, if I want to just stay with the same one, and it sets that namespace inside of the config file for me, which is super handy. And I think if I do ns I'll install that one as well. We'll do the exact same thing of find all my namespaces and set set that inside my context file. So the good and bad here, for me at least, I like doing different terminals with different clusters or different namespaces a lot. When it's file based, you can't do that. This is going to set that context and that namespace globally for every
terminal,
terminal, every cluster. So some people work differently. If you like that, that's great. And it uses FCF under the covers, which is a super great binary. If you've never used it for interactive lists, FCF, you can just pipe any list to FCF and it'll let you select it, which is awesome.
That is cool.
So let me do list. I installed a bunch of plugins as I was just kind of exploring things, looking at things on the list of hey, this one looks fun. This one, might be handy. And I wanted to kind of dive into a few of them. And Brent, the first one that I saw for you, where is it? Custom columns. You can template out, this has a custom columns template. It has a template directory already, but you can make your own for custom columns. You give it a template name and then whatever you want at the end, which is just standard, kubectl commands. And right. But it'll output it specifically. So if I say, let's say I had a couple of them. So they have a directory inside that crew directory of templates, but you add your own there. So if I look at these, requests going to all the app front end pods, it automatically said, "Oh, your request and status." Rather than get pods out, blah blah blah, I can just do custom columns.
That's perfect.
And if I look at the store custom templates, and this was called requests. So it's literally just your header and then which part of the spec you want. And it just uses that for your custom column output. I told it when I saw that, I thought of you because I'm like, this is what Brett wants. You can make your own, you can make a template just like this. And as long as you remember what that template is named, you could say, oh, I want that template and always show me that. And you can alias those or whatever. And this is a great way just to be able to have like a bunch of different templates. And I wouldn't be surprised if you could, PR those back to the main repo and everyone can get them if you do something all the time. And you say, I want always these columns when I make this sort of request. And it's a great way just to kind of get that.
Totally. Yeah, that's awesome. Texan Raj is asking, are there any custom crew templates for AWS specific services or EKS services? And I saw one when you were pulling up the list. It was EKS Exporter. And it was, I didn't know what that did.
So that one's a little different. It's really cool, but it's not EKS specific, which is kind of a terms are overloaded a lot of times. But if I kubectl get pod, and so if I say, let's look at, I don't know, it's payment service. Oh, see, I can't copy and paste from this thing. Oh, because that's okay. So let's describe. Actually, you know what I want is. That's what I want. So I have this output YAML, right? And this says a bunch of stuff, status, conditions, a lot of stuff that I actually don't want necessarily. And so if I say, oh, this is, not helpful for me right now because I want to move to a different cluster, or I want to compare like just the stripped down version of it, that's where you can do exporter. That, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that was the spelling. And this cleans up, no, that was wrong. Oh,
EKS porter.
I think I don't want get because I think it automatically will show me. Yeah, there you go. I just want the verb and the thing I'm looking for, or the noun and the verb, or the noun and specific one. So I want pod, and this is going to take out a lot of the templated stuff, or the things that were specific to my cluster right now, which is handy if you want to move it somewhere else. There's actually another one if you want to do the standard YAML output, and you can do Neat. Neat was another one that does a similar thing. You can pipe it to Neat, and it removes a lot of that extra stuff inside your cluster as well. So again, this is just bare minimum where I got this container, some resources about it, and what I could use to take this. And I literally could like pipe this to kubectl in another cluster and say, run it over there. And none of that custom stuff is in there. And so Neat is
I've definitely had that problem before and had to clean up all that, extra
manually deleting all those lines from the YAML. And so exporter leaves a lot of the fields there, and so it doesn't clean it up, but it blanks the values in a lot of cases. Neat is really like strip out everything that I don't need and let me run that somewhere else. And so I really liked how Neat was kind of just, I like how they just pipe to it too. It's like, because, this is the one I want. And now it's for me, it's easy to say, like, I don't want to change the command at the front. Let me just add it on the end and get the output I want, which is awesome.
That is cool.
Yeah, I take that.
I think there was another, you can do it from a file, like a local file as well, or output to a file. So if you don't want it standard outs or you want JSON, that kind of stuff is super handy too.
Awesome. What else is there? This is so much fun.
So I always have this problem. If you do
pod dive, that sounds.
Pod. I want to get to pod dive. Yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
So get all kubectl get all is get you certain, not all. It always bugged me that it's like this isn't actually all. This is pods. So inside of Kubernetes, there's objects register themselves as part of this all thing. And so if I actually want to get all, there's a plugin that gets all. Like it's like a, yes, actually I want everything from this cluster. And that'll go through and get secrets and gets, volumes and storage classes and cluster, like everything is actually in that get all output, which is handy if you really need to see like something's in here that I need and I don't know what it's called. And so get all will get that for you.
Yeah, if you want to ever explain to someone how complex Kubernetes actually can be, then I imagine kubectl get-all would be like the perfect illustration. All these objects, everything, and there's a lot. Event, ooh, that looks fun too.
I saw Sniff. I'm just curious what Sniff does.
Oh, yeah.
Sniff will attach a Wireshark or TCP dump to a pod and stream it back to you.
That's
which is
dope.
So there's that one, and there's also what's the other one called? Capture, which uses sysdig under the cover. So it's looking at the kernel calls. So it gets more than just network traffic, but you could say, hey, sysdig, I want you to capture from that pod and stream it back to me, which is also pretty awesome.
Also, I know it's probably not read this way, but I'm going to read it this way just because it's fun. Ipick, like that would be instead of Ipick. I'm sure it's Ipick, but still.
So Ipick is actually. I'll show that one here. Let me show the pod.
I like Ipick. Ick.
like gross. You're doing something that you shouldn't be doing.
Exactly.
Dive.
And also, Texan Raj asked about Crew Doctor. Yeah, I'm curious about that one too.
I bet that's like Brew Doctor, where it'll fix your crew.
It looks at your cluster and gets information and tries to figure out if things might be wrong. It looks for like orphaned pods or storage and that kind of stuff. So Doctor's pretty handy in some of those cases. A lot of this tooling is, in my opinion, is like either debugging or operations management of clusters. And so there's a lot like there for, hey, I need to figure out what's going on with this, which I think is really great, be able to extend, the API of Kubernetes to be able to like debug things really well. And there's a lot of things like ephemeral pods and debug will attach a container with a shell, with a BusyBox shell into the same namespace and everything. So a lot of that stuff is great just to be able to say like, oh, I want to go right to that and debug it without needing to, recreate everything.
I saw CSSH, and that made me think someone should write a plugin to attach to Systems Manager shell to be able to systems manage shell into an EC2 instance instead of
but yeah, you could run the agent for sure. Kubectl exec,
I feel like surely we can install the agent as a daemon set, and then it would be like there and running, and then we could. Well,
it'd be a daemon set on the instances. And I mean, if you're running Amazon Linux, you already have it, like
I think it's in the default EKS provided AMI.
Yeah, not for EKS, for ECS, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it's default available in the Amazon Linux EKS AMI.
Yeah. But I bet there's a daemon set that you could install that would get it there. And then I that would be a fun plugin to write, is to sort of mimic CSSH, but do it using Systems Manager instead.
You could also use SSM helpers from Disney Streaming, which execs to multiple instances. That was why one of the reasons we wrote it was we wanted to go to multiple instances at once. So it starts a tmux to get to all those instances.
Oh, wow. That would be cool too.
So I like Tree. Tree always helped me to like what is actually creating these pods. And you can say, so Tree deploy, I'm looking at the deployment stress, which makes a deployment a replica set. And here's the pods. Are they ready? How long have they been around? That sort of stuff.
That's a good visualization.
You can use Tree for you can use it for custom resources. If there is some sort of dependency graph of a resource, you can actually work backwards with Tree, which I loved it when I was, heavy into like, what is this thing? Where did it come from? Oh, I need to modify. Like if you delete something and it comes back, you're like, okay, where did this come from? And you can, dig into it and go backwards.
I have so run into that before. And yeah. So if I tree one of the pods, it would show me all the way back up to the deployment.
I have to quote it because I have an alias for tree, but yes, you could look at deployment. Where's the cluster? Where was the... So this has a custom. I thought there was a way to do it with just the pod. Let's see.
It wouldn't
Oh,
it just be pod,
Pod
I
and
have
then pod.
that. Yeah. Yep, that's
Yeah.
right. No, so that doesn't, it's not working backwards. If I look at, let's look at the replica set and see what it shows us. That piece, that only goes up one because it has the one parent, but it doesn't go down. Interesting.
Interesting, yeah. So I guess it depends on having the parent set and all that stuff, but still,
So
it would be.
your question about like, can we exec to a lot of pods? So there's this tmuck exec plugin as well, which I thought was awesome because I often want to exec to multiple things and see where they're different. And so in this case, I can say tmuck's exec to a label. It also does replica sets, a list of pods, a deployment, a service. And so I can say, oh, give me everything like up behind this service. And the D is just going to detach tmux because it actually doesn't work inside of this browser terminal. And then what I want to run. And so if I run that, I have to attach to it.
Wow.
Target one. And here's my terminal inside of all of those.
Wow.
But I can, the top two terminals are my actual. So like these are all the container pods. It's a little funky inside of this terminal, but I can totally like dig into each one. And then my standard that actually work, I can use tmux commands to zoom. Like if I do Control B Z, we'll zoom into one, and then I can do a bunch of stuff here. Like I could say,
this is dope. Like, I love this.
I can zoom back out. Like, so if I'm like, oh, I don't want this terminal on this window anymore. I can just Control D, close it, and then I still have all the other ones up. And so I could just one by one zoom into it. Like, okay, let me debug this. Like, let me see what the logs are, whatever I'm trying to do, and then close out of it when I'm done. And I can just keep going one by one and figuring out like, okay, these are the same, what isn't. But I love the sync between all the terminal windows and being able to just match it by whatever I want.
Awesome. I mean, anything super dangerous is also pretty super cool. So yeah, that's really cool.
I disconnect all, yeah. But,
so I happened to see there was a Datadog one. Do you know anything about that?
Hold on, I just killed my terminal by accident.
Uh-oh.
that terminal was still up, and so I forgot to. Hold on. Let's get back to it. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so there are some, like Datadog is one. I believe that one will. I think it installs the agent or it collects the flares. That's right. So you can do agent to install it. You can give a cluster agent, but also you can collect flares, which if you're used to Datadog will basically send them debug information from an agent for a ticket or whatever. If like you're having problems or you want some special metrics or something, you can send those flares for support. So they wrote a plugin that says, hey, let's just do it this way instead of copy and paste all this bash. Like, hey, this is how we can do it with an agent. They have a controller that actually can run inside of your cluster to make sure that the agent is up to date and all this stuff, which is pretty cool.
That is so cool, man. The world of plugins is just super robust.
You mentioned Ipack.
Yeah.
So this one, it's
Ipack.
Ipack and Ipxec are both similar in that they're interactive. And so instead of saying, hey, Iexec would say, I want to go to a pod, but I don't know which one. Like I have to figure it out. And so give me a list of them. And it's similar to like, kubectx or kubeNS, where it actually will give you a prompt for it. So Ipack will say, I want to describe a pod and give me everything for the label stress. And so that's my app name. And so it's going to give me, all of these stress containers that I have running. And as soon as I select one, it's going to run the describe pod command on that one. And so it's just the same way as like, oh, I don't know which one I need. Let me find it. Because a lot of times with auto-generated names and stuff, like you may just like, oh, this one has a problem, but I don't know exactly which one it is.
That's awesome.
What was the other one? Oh, Tail is super nice for being able to get logs from multiple containers, where usually you can kubectl log a pod, but I can tail a service.
So let's make this the last one, and then I think we got to wrap up.
Yeah, this is in. There's a couple like mtail. There's a standalone binary called stir, and there's a few other commands that do this. Tail was just a way to do it inside of, as a plugin, and it allows you to do it with multiple things. So here's my service front end, all of the containers behind that service. It's not just one. It says, and so if I stop it, you can actually see like the individual. I think this one has multiple containers, but yeah, it'll get all the information.
I've had so many people ask for this, and I didn't know this existed. So I feel like if you've ever asked me, can you do this? And I said, not very easily, I'm sorry. It turns out you can, and this is how, because that is a huge add. That should be like built into Kubectl. That one is so like requested.
Adam, actually, this is the last one, because I was one-upped with Exterminate, where Snap will delete half of the pods in your cluster. It's just
nice.
like, and so you can limit to a namespace, all namespaces. So if I do that, it will actually say, are you sure you're going to delete half of those pods? And
that's awesome.
I hope they remember you.
And so I said yes, and it's deleting half of the pods in all namespaces inside of my cluster right now, which is pretty epic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ultra chaos.
Don't run it in prod.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Don't say that we told you to run this.
Agreed.
That's amazing.
Agreed. So I think that's it for today. We should wrap up. Justin, as always, just awesome demos, and I learned a ton. Crew has opened our eyes. I know Brent too, because of everything Brent was saying. But So Brent, really quick, what do we have tomorrow? What's coming up?
I think tomorrow we're going to take a look at the new integration between pods and security groups, and we're gonna dive into that blog post that Justin posted earlier, and we're gonna run through it, use it as an example, and we're gonna hook up our pods to some security groups. And if I remember correctly, the way we'll test that is we'll reach out and talk to an RDS database, and we'll ensure that only the pod that should be allowed to talk to the RDS database is allowed to talk to the RDS database. So that's up for tomorrow.
Defense in depth, people. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you, everybody. We will see you tomorrow.